The NES is the first great video game console. Modern gaming, Nintendo, and probably you would not be what they are without this console. It's still referenced so often, and people still love it so much, even over 40 years later. Yet that doesn't mean that it's perfect. In fact, I would say that a majority of the games on this console are probably duds, but there are still a handful that are gems that are still absolutely worth playing today. So whether you played these games in the 80s, or if you're interested in experiencing the history of gaming for yourself, these are what I believe to be the best of the best on the NES, and games that still leave a lasting legacy. Starting with the last game that Nintendo released on the system, we have Kirby's Adventure. This is absolutely one of the best looking games for the system, and one of the most beautiful 8-bit games ever made. If you look at any part of this game, it just looks incredible. But even more than the visuals, this is such an imaginative game, and you can tell the developers put so much effort into each idea that was presented. The copy abilities work so well, and it helps set the foundation for what Kirby would be moving forward. And even though it may not have the same depth as games that came afterwards in the series, it has a simplicity that I think still works very well for Kirby. For being the sequel to Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy, this is exactly what you would want and expect from a sequel. It's bigger, it's better, and it's a special game that I would still highly recommend playing. The Mysterious Murasame Castle is a Japan-exclusive game from Nintendo, and it makes me upset that it is, because this should absolutely be one of Nintendo's biggest series. It's an action-adventure game that still plays and works extremely well. I mean, the music is great, the concept is great, you literally fight ninjas and aliens. I fully believe that if they put the same amount of effort and energy into making this a series as they did something like Zelda, this would be one of the best and most memorable that they have. And it seems that Nintendo had at least a little interest into making this something bigger too, because this is actually the first time that they got into film with a Mysterious Murasame Castle movie. Plus, there's a mini game in Nintendo Land based off of it, so there's at least been a little interest in it over time, but they just never fully commit to it for whatever reason. Still, on its own, it is an underrated classic on the NES, and it's available to play on the NSO service, so if you're interested in experiencing what could have been potentially one of Nintendo's greatest series, then I would say for sure check this one out. The first and only Zapper game that will appear on this list. Nowadays, people may forget, but Duck Hunt is actually one of the best-selling games of all time. But to be fair, it was a pack-in title and also released alongside another game that, who knows, may or may not appear on this list a little later. But regardless, this is still a really fun and novel experience. It may be a little harder to access than other games on this list, considering you need the Zapper and a CRT, but if you do have them, then it's easy to tell why this game is still loved by so many people. Out of all the many high score based games that are on this system, I would say that this is possibly the best out of any of them. The tactile and tangible feeling of it is still something that you don't experience much in modern gaming. It was novel then, and it's still, if not even more novel now. Mega Man is a series that absolutely deserves to be on this list, yet the difficult part of this is just deciding which one. Every one of them, maybe disregarding the original, but every one of these games still holds up incredibly well and feels modern in a way that most other NES games don't. But for my list, I think I'm gonna have to go with Mega Man 6. I know that this isn't typically the one that people will put on lists like this, and while I think a game like Mega Man 2 or 3 is great, I just remember playing 6 more than any of them and having a great time with it. The argument is typically that Mega Man 6 is just a little too easy, but my argument would be that that's not a bad thing. You don't have to memorize the location of every enemy and know exactly which ability to use on each boss. You can go into it blindly, use the new ability suits, and overall just have a fun time with it. I love Tetris. I believe that Tetris is the greatest puzzle game ever made, and overall one of the best games ever made, period. It's infinitely replayable, it's so fun to learn, and what's so amazing about this one specifically is that it's still played in tournaments and people are still breaking records in it over 40 years after it released. Personally, I don't think that it's the best Tetris game out there, and it's not the first or anything, but for the fact that it's still a great version of Tetris, and that it's had the legacy that it has, I would say it's still worth putting on this list. If you're going to play a classic Tetris with a randomization and all, this is probably the best one out there. Contra is difficult, but it's the good type of difficult. It's the type that makes you want to keep playing again and again even after you've died 100 times. Because the game is so tight to control and consistent, eventually you'll gain a muscle memory for exactly what you're supposed to do. It clicks in a way that very few games do. When you die, and you will die, it doesn't feel frustrating. Instead, it makes you want to try again and fix what you did wrong. It's also short enough that this process isn't annoying or frustrating. You can beat it fairly quickly if you know what you're doing, and you can also play it in multiplayer. And if you find someone who's willing to go on that journey with you, I would say it's one of the best that you could experience on this console together. It's rewarding, it's fun, and it also has the Konami code, which is obviously a plus. Out of all the games on this list, this one may not have aged as gracefully, it may not be as accessible, and it's extremely confusing at times, but none of that takes away from what makes The Legend of Zelda special. This game has left such a significant legacy, not just for the Zelda series, not just for the NES, but for gaming as a whole. This is a landmark title that was one of the first games that really felt like an adventure that anyone could go on. Even though I wasn't around when the game first came out, not by a long shot, I still think it's so incredible to see how people used to call Nintendo's hotlines to get hints about the secrets in the game. This was a conversation to be had, a world to explore, and it's no wonder why it's still remembered over 40 years later. While the Zelda series would go on to do some truly incredible things, this is still a game that if you can be willing to go at a slower pace and take your time to map it out, it's still just as worth playing now as it was back then. Now, number 3, we have Super Mario Bros. 3. You don't need me to tell you about this game. If you know anything about Mario, and if you know anything about the NES, then you already know how amazing Super Mario Bros. 3 really is. You would be hard-pressed to find many other games on this system that are as imaginative, still fun to play, and that hold up nearly as well as this one does. The amount of levels, the amount of power-ups, the amount of secrets. When you play this game, you're bound to ask yourself, how in the world did they get this on the NES? This is one of the few games on the NES where it can be enjoyed just as much now, if not even more than when it first released. If somehow you've never played this game before, please let me or someone else know and we will get you a copy. This is a masterpiece, and it's not something that you should miss out on. While it may seem like a fighting game at first glance, Punch-Out is more like an action puzzle game. It's hard to describe, but it is a ton of fun. The sprites are big and expressive, the gameplay is quick and snappy, and it's one of the most memorable games on the system. Everyone who's played Punch-Out will remember beating up Glass Joe, finding the weakness of King Hippo, and trying to dodge whatever the heck this is. It's the little details against every fighter, the fact that Mario is the referee, and whatever Doc says in between rounds, that make this game stand out compared to anything else. The warp pipe that takes you to the end of the first level, the top path that takes you to the secret room in the underground stages, the infinite one-up glitch. If Iconic had a name, it would be Super Mario Bros. If the NES, the 80s, and heck, even if Mario had to be summed up with one game, I think it might be this one. While Mario was a character before Super Mario Bros., this is a game that really solidified the world and the gameplay in a way that revolutionized gaming. Platformers would not be what they are without this game. The way that Mario controls is still so tight, and it's still insanely fun to speedrun. It may not be the most complex game, it may not be the longest or the most detailed, but it's a classic for a reason. It made Mario, Nintendo, and the NES what they are now, and it's still a blast to play through. But those are some of my picks, and I'm curious, do you agree with my list? Would you add or change anything? Let me know in the comments. And on the way down, like, subscribe, and also,
check this out.